Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So, right now in America and around the globe, we're dealing with a full-blown mental health crisis. And it's not just because people are mentally ill, it's because the world we're living in is toxic, overwhelming, and spiritually empty. People are suffering, and what does the government say? They act like they're trying to help, but what they're really doing is playing a numbers game. They need the high numbers of people in the system to justify more funding. That's why they push the mental health narrative so hard. It's not just about discrediting people who speak up, especially those who talk about gangstalking. It's about getting people into treatment, even if that treatment isn't real healing. Because once you're in the system, you're a statistic they can use to build more facilities, more housing, and more control. So in essence, we as targets, we're being trafficked through a psychological system, not for sex, not for labor, but for data and funding. We're being used to justify a massive mental health agenda, one that relies on inflated numbers to keep the money flowing. And I truly believe there's going to be a lot more targets in the future, not because people are mentally ill or dangerous, but because the system needs those numbers. A lot more people are going to be labeled. They're going to push more narratives and create more victims, all to make their crisis look bigger on paper. It's not about care, it's a business model. Now, you can't talk about mental health without talking about drugs or homelessness, and just like mental health, the system is designed to keep these problems going. Now, don't get me wrong, there are people who are really struggling with addiction who need help, but what's not being talked about is why so many people are turning to drugs in the first place. A lot of the pain and trauma that people are feeling is engineered by this very system, and they like to sit back and say, look at all these addicts, look at all these mentally ill people, we need more funding. But what they're not saying is they're part of the reason this is happening. Back in the days, there used to be more long-term mental health facilities. Some of them were abusive, and yeah, they need a reform, but what did the government do instead? They shut them down completely. So where would all these people go that needed treatment? Well, they went to jail, they ended up on the streets, or they fell into that weird gray zone where they're not sick enough for help but too sick to survive on their own. And guess what? Now they're pushing to rebuild these institutions, but not out of compassion, but out of profit. Now let's tie all this into what we already know, gangstalking. A lot of people being targeted are not mentally ill. They're aware, they're alert, they're just being harassed in a way that the average person can't wrap their head around. They use the mental health and drug narrative to discredit the truth, but here's the deeper part. They also use it to funnel you into their system so they can say, look at all these cases, look at how many people need help, we need more funding, we need more control. It's a cycle. They create the problem, they label the victim, then they use the numbers to build more power for themselves. Think about what's really going on behind the scenes when they push these narratives. It's not just to shut you up, it's to justify the next phase of control. Mental institutions, group homes, drug programs, not all of them are evil, but a lot of them are run for profit, not healing. Alright, now let's talk about the most evil part of all this, the money. Let's be real, America doesn't do anything on a large scale unless someone profits, and that includes mental health care, addiction services, and even homeless housing. So who's making money off of all this? Well, let's break it down. Number one, you got private treatment centers. You got big name corporations running these so-called mental health centers, raking in millions of dollars a year. Some charge anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000 a month just for treatment. But what does that treatment usually look like? Well, a few therapy sessions, group meetings, medication, maybe some yoga or crafts. Meanwhile, patients go home just as broken or worse. It's a revolving door because a cured patient doesn't bring in more money. Number two, you have insurance companies. The insurance industry loves this game. They approve short-term stays, hand out psych meds, and count you as another successful treatment case. It's all a numbers game. Even if the person didn't improve, it still goes under the books as care provided. Then you've got all these nonprofits claiming to help with homelessness or mental health. Some are legit, but a lot of them are just money funnels. They get state and federal grants, sometimes in the tens of millions, and barely move the needle. They'll open one or two housing units, throw a few people in, take a couple pictures for PR, and the rest of the money, it's gone. It's all about looking like you're helping, because looking good gets you more funding for next year. Now here's something most people don't realize. All those mental hospitals that shut down decades ago, they're starting to rebuild them. Quietly, in pieces, but under different names. They don't call them asylums anymore. They call them behavioral health campuses, wellness centers, and residential treatment housing. Sounds nicer, right? But what they're doing is the same, locking people away and calling it care. So, who is it that they're targeting? Well, people with no money, no support system, and anyone who questions the system too loudly. The mental health narrative isn't just a shield for corrupt systems, it's a sword too. It's there to discredit whistleblowers, targeted individuals, victims of organized abuse, and anyone who challenges authority. They don't need to silence you anymore. They just call you sick, and once you're labeled, you're no longer believable and you're no longer a threat. You ever notice how certain neighborhoods always have outreach vans, mobile crisis teams, or mental health volunteers walking around? You think they're just there helping the homeless, but often they're collecting information. They're trying to flag people who don't fit in within the herd. Once they find someone who seems paranoid or unstable, they send in mental health teams or people who have been trained in behavioral intervention. It's not always about help. Sometimes it's about getting you into the system. Now let's talk about the tech, because in 2025, technology is their new tool for control. They're not just using phones, apps, and social media to keep tabs on you. They're using AI to profile your mental state. Your search history, your voice toning calls, your texts, your social media posts, they feed all that data into behavioral algorithms. Then they label you. Meanwhile, you're just walking around thinking everything is normal while the digital version of you is being used to justify surveillance. Right now, some cities are using programs where AI flags people for behavioral intervention, kind of like predictive policing but for your mind. Now, all of a sudden, you're on a watch list, not as a criminal, but as a mental health risk. And what's crazy is a lot of this stuff is happening through social services, community outreach, behavioral health units, school counselors, and church-run programs. So here's the part that I really want you to understand. When we say things like they're just trying to discredit us, that's only part of the story. Yes, they want to silence you, and yes, they want people to think you're crazy, but more than that, they want to use you to grow their empire. Because every time someone breaks down and says, okay, fine, I'll go talk to someone, or maybe I do need medication, that's just another statistic on paper. Then when they go in front of Congress or the media, they say, look at all these people with severe mental illness. We need more money. We need more control. So in the end, your suffering becomes fuel for their system. Some people might say, why not just ignore it? Why not just move on? Because ignorance is how the system grows. We have to speak up, not from fear, but from faith. Because someone out there is on the edge right now, and your voice might be the one that wakes them up. Alrighty guys, if you feel this video helped, share it with someone. Okay, stay blessed out there guys.